Hey everyone, welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into the story of Markiplier. In the sprawling landscape of online content creation, few names carry the weight and recognition of Markiplier. For more than a decade, this singular figure has shaped the very definition of what it means to be a gaming content creator, a philanthropist, a storyteller, and an entertainer who refuses to be confined by the boundaries that others might accept without question. The story of how a quiet kid from Hawaii and Ohio became one of the most influential voices on the internet is not simply a tale of viral videos and subscriber counts, though those elements certainly play their part. Rather, it's a deeply human story about perseverance through hardship, the courage to pursue unlikely dreams, the power of genuine connection with an audience, and the relentless drive to create something meaningful in a digital world that often feels ephemeral and disposable. To understand Markiplier is to understand a journey that began long before the first video upload, in the halls of schools where a young Mark Fishbach was learning who he was, in hospital rooms where he faced his own mortality, and in quiet moments of doubt where the path forward seemed impossibly unclear. The story begins on June 28, 1989, at the Tripler Army Medical Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. The hospital, a distinctive pink building that serves as the primary medical facility for the Pacific region, became the birthplace of Mark Edward Fishbach. His arrival into this world was marked by the intersection of two very different cultures and backgrounds. His father, Clifton Morris Fishbach Jr., was a German-American serviceman in the United States Army, a man whose military career had taken him across oceans and continents. His mother, Sunak Frank, was a woman of Korean descent, whose own story was rooted in the Korean Peninsula, where she had been born to a family that had fled North Korea during the chaos and devastation of the Korean War. The convergence of these two lives, one American military and one Korean civilian, created the foundation for a family that would embody the beautiful complexity of multicultural identity in America. The early days in Hawaii were fleeting. As is often the case with military families, permanence was a luxury that the Fishbachs could not afford. Shortly after Mark's birth, the family relocated to the continental United States, eventually settling in a rural area near Milford, Ohio, a small city within the greater metropolitan area of Cincinnati. This would become the landscape of Mark's childhood, a place where the suburbs gave way to woods and open spaces, where a young boy could explore and imagine and dream without the constant press of urban density. The house where the family settled had a large backyard that led directly into nearby woods, creating a natural playground that would serve as the backdrop for countless childhood adventures. These woods became a second home for Mark and his older brother, Jason Thomas Fishbach, who preferred to go by Thomas or Tom. The two brothers, separated by exactly 23 months in age, would spend hours in those woods, creating their own worlds and stories, learning the rhythms of nature and the value of imagination. But even in the seemingly idyllic setting of suburban Ohio, the Fishbach brothers faced challenges that many children in their position encountered. As children of mixed heritage in a predominantly white community, both Mark and Thomas experienced discrimination that left lasting marks on their formative years. The visible markers of their Korean heritage made them targets for prejudice and cruelty, particularly in the school system where teachers and fellow students alike sometimes treated them with suspicion or outright hostility. Of the two brothers, Thomas bore the heavier burden of this discrimination. His appearance made his Korean heritage more immediately apparent, and he faced more direct and consistent mistreatment from teachers and classmates who couldn't see past the color of his skin or the shape of his features. For a young child trying to find their place in the world, this kind of systematic rejection and othering can be devastating. It shaped both brothers' understanding of the world, teaching them early lessons about prejudice, resilience, and the importance of finding spaces where they could be accepted for who they truly were. The woods behind their house became one such space. There, away from the judgmental eyes of school and society. Mark and Thomas could simply be brothers, explorers, adventurers in their own imagined worlds. These early experiences in nature, in creative play, in building elaborate scenarios and narratives, were unknowingly preparing Mark for a future career that would depend heavily on his ability to craft stories, engage audiences, and create compelling content from thin air. The skills he developed as a child playing in the Ohio woods, learning to entertain himself and his brother, would eventually translate into an uncanny ability to entertain millions of people across the globe. The Fischbach household was one where gaming culture took root early. Thomas owned a Super Nintendo system, and this piece of hardware became a significant shared experience for the brothers. Mark's earliest gaming memories were formed sitting beside Thomas, watching him play, learning the rhythms and patterns of video games, absorbing the way stories could be told through interactive media. These weren't just idle hours of entertainment. They were formative experiences that would shape Mark's future in ways that nobody could have predicted at the time. Video games represented something more than just a pastime in the Fischbach home. They were a common language between brothers, a shared passion that transcended the difficulties they faced outside their home. They were windows into other worlds, places where a young boy dealing with discrimination and identity questions could become a hero, solve impossible problems, and experience adventures that real life in Milford, Ohio could never provide. As Mark grew older, he attended Milford High School, where he began to develop the interests and talents that would later define his creative work. High school was a period of gradual self-discovery, though Mark remained what he would later describe as a quiet and somewhat introverted student. He wasn't the popular kid or the star athlete. Instead, he found his community in the school's marching band, where he developed his musical abilities and learned the value of disciplined practice and collaborative performance. Music would remain an important part of his life, even as his primary career path took him in different directions. The discipline required to master an instrument, to work in harmony with other musicians, to practice until difficult passages became second nature, all of these lessons would translate directly into his approach to content creation, where consistency, practice, and the ability to work well with collaborators would prove essential. But beneath the surface of this relatively normal suburban upbringing, Mark was dealing with questions about his future that many teenagers face, but few resolve easily. What did he want to do with his life? Where did his talents and interests intersect with viable career paths? How could he honor both sides of his heritage while finding his own unique identity? These weren't questions with easy answers, and Mark didn't have them figured out as he approached the end of his high school years. What he did have was a sharp mind, a love of problem solving, and a family that emphasized the value of education and professional success. When Mark graduated from Milford High School in 2007, he had already made a significant decision about his future, though it was one that would ultimately prove to be just a stepping stone rather than his final destination. He enrolled at the University of Cincinnati to pursue a degree in biomedical engineering. This was a practical choice, a field that combined Mark's aptitude for science and mathematics with the promise of a stable, well-paying career. Engineering was the kind of profession that parents could be proud of, that seemed to offer security and prestige. It was, in many ways, the responsible choice for a young man from a middle-class family looking to build a successful life. The University of Cincinnati provided Mark with more than just an academic education. It was there that he formed friendships that would last far beyond his college years. In 6th grade, he had met Wade Barnes, and the two had maintained their friendship through the years. At the university, Mark's roommate during his freshman year was Bob Meiskens. These two individuals, Wade and Bob, would eventually become not just Mark's close friends, but also his. Long-term collaborators in content creation. The bonds formed during those college years sharing living spaces, navigating the challenges of higher education, supporting each other through the ups and downs of young adulthood, created a foundation of trust and camaraderie that would prove invaluable in the years to come. Little did any of them know that their college friendships would eventually become professional partnerships that would be witnessed by millions of people around the world. But Mark's college years were also marked by profound loss and difficulty. In 2008, when Mark was just 19 years old, his father Clifton passed away. The cause was lung cancer, a disease that had ravaged Clifton's body and left his family to grapple with grief and loss. For a young man still figuring out who he was and what he wanted from life, losing a parent is a devastating experience that reshapes everything. The pain of watching his father suffer and die would leave marks on Mark that would influence his future in profound ways. Years later, when Mark became known for his extensive charitable work, particularly his fundraising efforts for cancer research and children's hospitals, the shadow of his father's death would be evident in his passionate commitment to these causes. The loss transformed grief into purpose, personal pain into public good. The year 2012 marked a turning point in Mark's life, though it began as perhaps the lowest period he had yet experienced. This single year brought a cascading series of challenges that would have broken many people. Mark went through a painful breakup, ending a relationship that had been important to him. He was laid off from his job, losing the financial stability that had allowed him to support himself. His mother, dealing with her own struggles and frustrations, asked him to move out of her house, forcing him to find his own apartment and figure out how to survive independently. Then, as if these challenges weren't enough, Mark experienced severe abdominal pain that landed him in the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. The surgery was successful, but it left Mark weakened, in debt from medical bills, and facing an uncertain future. It was during this period of crisis that Mark found himself in a hospital bed, recovering from surgery, dealing with the physical pain and emotional exhaustion of everything he had been through. He was 2 semesters away from completing his biomedical engineering degree at the University of Cincinnati. He was so close to achieving the goal he had set for himself when he first entered college. But as he lay in that hospital bed, something shifted in his perspective. He realized that he had been pursuing a path not because it was what he truly wanted, but because it seemed like the safe, responsible choice. He had been moving toward a future that looked good on paper, but didn't excite him, didn't ignite any real passion in his heart. During his recovery, Mark made a decision that seemed crazy to many people around him. He decided to leave the biomedical engineering program, to walk away from years of work and investment, to abandon the security of a degree that was nearly complete. Instead, he chose to pursue something that had been growing in his mind for some time. He wanted to create content on YouTube. This decision required tremendous courage. YouTube in 2012 was not yet the proven career path it would later become. It was still seen by many as a hobby, a place where people posted funny cat videos and amateur vlogs, not a legitimate platform for building a sustainable career. Mark's choice to drop out of college and pursue YouTube full-time was met with skepticism and concern from many people who cared about him. But Mark had reached a point where the safe path felt more dangerous than the risky one. He would rather try and fail at something he was passionate about than succeed at something that left him feeling empty. On March 6th, 2012, Mark registered his first YouTube channel. The name he chose was Markiplier, a portmanteau of his first name and the word multiplier. The concept behind the name was that Mark would portray multiple characters in comedy sketches, multiplying himself across different roles and personalities. Looking back years later, Mark would describe the name as really dumb, recognizing that it was somewhat arbitrary and didn't have the elegance or cleverness he might have hoped for, but the name stuck, and it would eventually become one of the most recognized brands in online gaming content. Mark's original vision for the channel was actually focused on comedy sketches and action videos rather than gaming content. He had ideas for elaborate scenarios and characters, ways to showcase his creativity and humor through scripted content. However, Mark also recognized that gaming videos were experiencing significant growth on YouTube at the time. The Let's Play format, where content creators recorded themselves playing video games while providing commentary, was becoming increasingly popular. Viewers enjoyed the combination of gameplay footage with the personality and reactions of the person playing. It offered a more social, communal experience of gaming, allowing people who might not own certain games or systems to experience them vicariously through their favorite creators. Mark decided to hedge his bets by creating gaming content alongside his planned comedy sketches. His first series was a Let's Play of Amnesia, The Dark Descent, a survival horror game that had been released in 2010. The game was perfect for the Let's Play format because it was genuinely frightening. It had an immersive atmosphere, and watching someone experience its scares for the first time was inherently entertaining. Mark's natural charisma, his expressive reactions, and his genuine fear and excitement as he played the game resonated with viewers in a way that exceeded his expectations. The channel grew rapidly, gaining over 94,000 subscribers within the first year. This growth was remarkable, especially considering that YouTube at the time required channels to have at least 1,000 subscribers before they could monetize their videos through the AdSense program. However, Mark encountered a significant obstacle during this initial period. He had problems with his AdSense account that prevented him from monetizing his videos, which meant that despite his growing audience, he wasn't able to earn money from his content. This forced him to make a difficult decision in April of 2012. He had to abandon his original channel and start a new one called Markiplier Game. Moving to a new channel meant losing some of the momentum he had built, but it was necessary to resolve the monetization issues. This setback could have derailed his entire YouTube career before it really began, but Mark persevered, rebuilding his audience on the new channel and continuing to create content despite the financial uncertainty. The decision to drop out of the University of Cincinnati became official during this period. Mark was literally 2 semesters away from graduating with his biomedical engineering degree. He had invested years of work and significant amounts of money into his education. Walking away from that investment when the finish line was so close seemed irrational to many observers. But Mark understood something important about himself. If he tried to balance finishing his degree while building his YouTube channel, he would likely do neither thing particularly well. Content creation requires consistent output and engagement with your audience. If Mark was going to make YouTube work as a career, he needed to commit to it fully, to treat it as seriously as any traditional job or career path. The decision to drop out was not made lightly, and it came with real risks. If the YouTube career didn't work out, Mark would be left without a degree, without a clear career path, and with debt from his incomplete college education. But he made the choice anyway, betting on himself and his ability to create something meaningful through online content. In early 2014, Mark made another significant move, this time geographically. He left Ohio and relocated to Los Angeles, California. This decision was strategic. Los Angeles was rapidly becoming the hub of online content creation. Many of the most successful YouTubers were based in or near Los Angeles, and the city offered better access to potential business opportunities, collaboration possibilities, and the emerging infrastructure that was beginning to support digital creators. Moving to LA meant leaving behind the familiar landscapes of his childhood, the support network of friends and family he had built in Ohio, but it also represented a commitment to taking his career to the next level. He wasn't just a guy in Ohio making videos in his bedroom anymore. He was a professional content creator working in the capital of entertainment media, ready to compete and collaborate with the best in the business. During these early years, Mark developed the distinctive style and approach that would define his content. He played with a unique energy that sat somewhere between the subdued, sarcastic approach of creators like Chaotic Monkey, better known as Cry, and the constantly frantic, high-energy style of creators like PewDiePie. When things were calm in a game, Mark would think carefully, analyze situations, and work through problems methodically. When danger arose, he would shift into a more intense, reactive mode. He had a knack for comedic timing, often taking on an exaggerated persona of courage and bravado when he was safe, proclaiming his superhuman strength and incredible gaming skills only to have that persona instantly shatter when actual threats appeared. This combination of genuine fear, humor, self-awareness, and skilled gameplay created a viewing experience that felt authentic and entertaining in equal measure. Mark also developed a strong ethical foundation for his content creation. Even in these early years, he began organizing charity live streams, recognizing that his growing platform gave him the ability to make a real difference in the world. The death of his father from cancer had instilled in him a deep commitment to supporting medical research and helping families dealing with serious illnesses. He began raising money for various charitable organizations, including Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, a nod to his Ohio roots and his desire to give back to the community that had shaped him. He also supported the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, Best Friends Animal Society, and numerous other causes that resonated with his personal values and experiences. This charitable work wasn't just a side project or a way to improve his public image. It was core to who Mark was as a person and what he wanted his platform to represent. By July of 2016, Mark and his viewers had collectively raised over $1,118,645.14 for various charitable causes, a figure that would continue to grow exponentially in the years that followed. Mark also became involved with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, helping to grant wishes for children with life-threatening medical conditions. By the middle of the 2010s, he had helped complete 13 wishes through the foundation. 2 of these wishes were documented on his YouTube channel. One with a young man named Patrick, who would later start his own YouTube channel under the name Shadleech, and another with Danelle Gonzalez. These experiences of meeting children who were facing serious health challenges, of seeing the joy that a simple meeting or interaction could bring to them and their families, reinforced Mark's commitment to using his platform for good. In October of 2016, Mark was awarded the Make-A-Wish Foundation's Celebrity of the Year Award, a recognition that meant more to him than many of the accolades he received for his content creation work. The year 2014 marked a watershed moment for Mark's channel, though he couldn't have known just how significant it would be at the time. On August 13, 2014, Mark uploaded his first Let's Play video of a new indie horror game called Five Nights at Freddy's. The game had been created by Scott Cawthon, an independent developer who had been struggling to create a successful game for years. Five Nights at Freddy's was Cawthon's last-ditch effort to make something that would resonate with players. The game's premise was brilliantly simple and terrifying. You play as a night security guard at a children's pizza restaurant called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The restaurant is populated by animatronic characters who are supposed to entertain children during the day. But at night, these animatronics roam freely, and they're not friendly. The player must survive from midnight to 6 in the morning by monitoring security cameras, managing limited power resources, and closing doors to keep the animatronics out of the office. The tension builds naturally as power drains and the animatronics get closer, culminating in jump scares that are genuinely startling. Mark's playthrough of Five Nights at Freddy's was a perfect match between content creator and content. His genuine fear and startled reactions to the jump scares were authentic and entertaining. His strategic thinking as he tried to manage power and predict animatronic movements engaged viewers. His humor and commentary kept things from becoming too tense, providing relief between scares. The video resonated with viewers in an extraordinary way. Within days, it was pulling in hundreds of thousands of views, then millions. By November of 2023, that first Five Nights at Freddy's video had been viewed over 114 million times, making it Mark's most viewed Let's Play video of all time. The video didn't just boost Mark's channel, it helped launch Five Nights at Freddy's into the cultural stratosphere. The relationship between Mark's coverage and Five Nights at Freddy's success became a subject of considerable debate within the gaming community. Some argued that Mark was primarily responsible for making the game famous, that his massive audience and engaging playthrough introduced millions of people to a game they might never have heard of otherwise. Others contended that Five Nights at Freddy's was destined for success regardless, that its clever design and effective scares would have found an audience eventually, and that Mark simply benefited from being an early adopter of a game that was going to be huge. The truth, as is often the case, likely lies somewhere in between. Mark's coverage certainly amplified the game's reach significantly, but the game's inherent quality and Scott Cawthon's brilliant marketing and community engagement also played crucial roles. What's undeniable is that Mark and Five Nights at Freddy's became inextricably linked in the public consciousness. Mark earned the informal title, King of FNAF, from the community, a recognition of his consistent coverage of the franchise and his genuine enthusiasm for the games. The Five Nights at Freddy's phenomenon didn't stop with the first game. Scott Cawthon proved to be remarkably prolific, releasing sequels, prequels, and spin-offs at an astonishing pace. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 arrived in November of 2014, just 3 months after the original. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 followed in March of 2015, and Five Nights at Freddy's 4 arrived in July of the same year. Mark played all of them, creating extensive Let's Play series that pulled in tens of millions of views each. He didn't just play the main games, he dove into the franchise's elaborate lore, discussing theories with his audience, engaging with the community that had formed around the games. He played fan-made Five Nights at Freddy's games, tribute games, and parodies. The franchise became a staple of his channel, and his coverage helped sustain interest in the games between official releases. Mark's association with Five Nights at Freddy's was so strong that when a film adaptation was announced, many fans assumed he would be involved in some capacity. The speculation was reasonable. Mark had arguably done more than any other single person to popularize the franchise. His playthroughs had been watched hundreds of millions of times. He was synonymous with Five Nights at Freddy's in a way that few content creators are ever synonymous with the games they cover. However, when the film was being cast and produced, Mark revealed that while he had been asked to appear in the movie, scheduling conflicts prevented it from happening. He was working on his own film project, the adaptation of the horror game Iron Lung, and the timing simply didn't work out. In one of Matt Pat's film theory videos, it was later confirmed that Mark was supposed to play the night security guard who gets killed by the animatronics in the film's opening scene. A brief but significant cameo that would have delighted fans. The fact that it didn't happen was disappointing to many, but it also demonstrated that Mark was now operating at a level where he had his own major projects that could compete for his time with a Hollywood film production. By the end of 2015, Mark's channel had crossed the threshold of 10 million subscribers, an achievement that placed him among the elite tier of YouTube creators. Just a few years earlier, he had been recovering from surgery in a hospital bed, deeply in debt, with no clear path forward. Now he was one of the most, recognizable faces in online entertainment, a creator whose videos were collectively viewed hundreds of millions of times each month. This growth wasn't just about the numbers, though the numbers were impressive. It was about the community that had formed around Mark's channel. The viewers who felt a genuine connection to him, who appreciated not just his content, but his authenticity, his humor, his willingness to be vulnerable and real with his audience. But success brought its own challenges and complications. The demands of maintaining a successful YouTube channel are more intense than many people realize. Viewers expect consistent content, regular uploads, fresh ideas. The pressure to perform, to be entertaining, to maintain the energy and enthusiasm that attracted viewers in the first place can be exhausting. Mark was uploading videos frequently, often daily, trying to keep his audience engaged and his channel growing. The work was relentless, and it took a toll. In March of 2015, Mark faced another serious health crisis. He began experiencing severe abdominal pain and was hospitalized for what turned out to be an adrenal tumor. An adrenal tumor can cause a variety of serious symptoms because it affects the adrenal glands, which produce crucial hormones that regulate metabolism, immune system function, blood pressure, and stress response. The tumor required immediate medical attention, and Mark underwent surgery to have it removed. The operation was successful, but it was a stark reminder of his own mortality and the importance of taking care of his health despite the demanding nature of his career. Remarkably, even from his hospital bed, Mark remained connected to his audience. He uploaded a video from the hospital discussing what had happened, explaining the situation to his concerned viewers. The video was raw and honest, showing Mark at a vulnerable moment, dealing with fear and uncertainty about his health. The response from his community was overwhelming. The video received over 5 million views, but more importantly, it received an outpouring of support from viewers who wanted Mark to know how much he meant to them, how much they hoped for his speedy recovery. This experience reinforced something Mark had been learning throughout his career. The relationship between creator and audience on YouTube could be genuinely meaningful. It wasn't just a transactional relationship where he provided entertainment, and they provided views and ad revenue. There was real care and connection there, a community that felt invested in his well-being beyond his ability to produce content. The health scare also led Mark to make some important decisions about how he managed his life and career. He couldn't maintain the breakneck pace indefinitely. He needed to find ways to balance his work with proper self-care, to build a sustainable approach to content creation that wouldn't burn him out or compromise his health. This was easier. This said than done, particularly given his own drive and perfectionism. But it was a lesson he continued to learn and refine over the years. Throughout 2015 and 2016, Mark continued to expand his content beyond just Let's Plays of horror games. He began incorporating more variety into his channel, including challenge videos, comedy sketches, collaborations with other creators, and experimental content that pushed the boundaries of what YouTube videos could be. He launched series like Drunk Minecraft with Wade and Bob, where they would play Minecraft while drinking, leading to hilarious commentary and chaotic gameplay. He created Happy Wheels highlights, condensing his funniest moments from playing the physics-based game Happy Wheels into entertaining compilation videos. He experimented with different formats and styles, always looking for new ways to engage his audience and keep his content fresh. Mark also became more ambitious in his scripted content. On Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2017, he released A Date with Markiplier, an interactive video experience that represented a major creative leap. The concept was elegantly simple, but technically complex. Viewers would watch a video of Mark taking them on a date, and at key moments, they would be presented with choices that determined what happened next. Each choice led to a different video, branching paths that resulted in one of 10 possible endings. The project required Mark to write multiple scripts, film dozens of scenes, coordinate with other creators who appeared in various paths, and carefully structure the YouTube-suggested video system to create the illusion of seamless interactivity. The result was a viewing experience unlike anything most people had encountered on YouTube before. A Date with Markiplier was a massive success, collectively amassing over 90 million views across all its various videos and endings. It demonstrated that YouTube could be a platform for ambitious, creative storytelling that went beyond simple entertainment. The success of A Date with Markiplier proved to be a proof of concept for even more ambitious projects. Mark had always aspired to be more than just a gaming YouTuber. He was interested in storytelling, in filmmaking, in creating experiences that would stick with people long after they finished watching. The interactive format offered a way to blend his YouTube expertise with his creative ambitions, creating something that was native to the platform, but also pushing its boundaries in exciting directions. In November of 2016, Mark signed with William Morris Endeavor, one of the most prestigious talent agencies in the entertainment industry. This was a significant moment because it represented mainstream entertainment industry recognition of Mark's value and potential. WME represented major Hollywood stars, directors, and producers. The fact that they wanted to represent a YouTuber indicated how much the landscape of entertainment was shifting, how creators like Mark were becoming genuine power players in the entertainment ecosystem rather than just internet curiosities. Mark's first major project with WME was the You're Welcome Tour in spring of 2017. This was an ambitious live touring show that brought Mark and 4 other YouTubers to perform 31 shows across the United States and Europe. The team included MySkerm, Bob, Lord Minion 7077, Wade, Tyler Scheid, and Ethan Nestor. The tour incorporated musical performances, comedy sketches, improvisation, and audience participation, creating a live entertainment experience that showcased the breadth of Mark's talents beyond just sitting in front of a camera playing video games. Planning the tour took 5 months, and every detail was carefully considered to create a show that would feel special and memorable for the people who attended. The tour was a success, demonstrating that Mark's appeal extended beyond the digital realm, and that his audience was willing to show up in person to support him and experience his content in a new format. In January of 2018, Mark began producing exclusive content for Twitch as part of a deal with Disney Digital Network. This was an interesting move because Mark's primary platform had always been YouTube, but it showed his willingness to experiment with different platforms and formats. Streaming on Twitch offered a more immediate, interactive experience with viewers compared to pre-recorded YouTube videos, and Mark wanted to explore what that different dynamic could offer. In March of 2018, Mark's YouTube channel reached 20 million subscribers, another milestone that demonstrated his continued growth and relevance in an increasingly crowded creator landscape. But 2018 also brought profound personal tragedy. In June, Mark went on hiatus from uploading videos to mourn the death of his 19-year-old stepniece, Miranda Craycraft, who had been killed in a car accident. The sudden loss of someone so young was devastating for Mark and his entire family. Mark organized a GoFundMe campaign to help cover Miranda's funeral expenses, and his community responded with characteristic generosity, raising over $79,000. This experience of grief, of loss, of the fragility of life would influence Mark's perspective and creative work in the years that followed. Life could be cut short at any moment. Time was precious. The work you do and the impact you have on others matters because you never know how long you have to make that impact. In October of 2017, Mark released Who Killed Markiplier, a 4-part mystery series that represented another evolution in his scripted content. The series was a whodunit murder mystery that played with different characters and timelines, featuring elaborate costumes, sets, and cinematography that rivaled many professional productions. Mark played multiple characters in the series, including the ill-fated host of a party, the sinister Darkiplier, and the unhinged Wilford Warfstache. The series was released over 4 consecutive days in October, with each chapter pulling in millions of views. It demonstrated Mark's growing confidence and skill as a storyteller and filmmaker. He wasn't just making YouTube videos anymore. He was crafting narrative experiences that happened to be distributed through YouTube. Following Who Killed Markiplier, Mark released 2 spin-off videos. Damien and Wilford Mother-Loving Warfstache, each focusing on specific characters from the original series and expanding the lore he had created. These videos served multiple purposes. They satisfied his audience's desire for more content in this universe. They allowed Mark to explore these characters in greater depth. And they served as valuable experience and practice for the even more ambitious projects he was planning. Each successive project was a step up in scope, complexity, and production value. Mark was learning how to be a filmmaker, how to manage larger productions, how to work with crews and coordinate complex shoots, all skills that would prove essential for his future work. By late 2018, Mark was ready to tackle his most ambitious interactive project yet. YouTube approached him about creating an original interactive special for their YouTube Originals program. The platform wanted to create something that would compete with Netflix's Black Mirror Bandersnatch, which had demonstrated the potential of interactive storytelling in the streaming era. Mark wrote a script for A Heist with Markiplier, a choose-your-own-adventure story that would dwarf A Date with Markiplier in scope and complexity. Where the dating video had 10 endings, this heist story would have 31 possible endings. The entire production encompassed 61 separate videos that viewers would navigate through based on their choices. The plot of A Heist with Markiplier was deceptively simple. Mark and the viewer, portrayed through first-person camera, team up to steal a mysterious artifact from a heavily secured museum. But as the story branches and evolves based on the viewer's choices, it becomes clear that something much stranger is happening. Different paths reveal wildly different versions of reality. In some endings, the artifact is an ancient alien device. In others, it's a cursed object. Some paths lead to success and wealth, others to failure and imprisonment, and still others to bizarre supernatural encounters. The story featured appearances by various YouTube personalities, including Rosanna Pansino, Matthew Patrick, Matt Pat, and the Slow Mo Guys, as well as Twitch streamer Soda Poppin'. Mark reprised several of his popular character personas, including Darkiplier and Wilford Warfstache, and introduced new characters like the charming adventurer Illinois, the charismatic criminal Yancey, and the eccentric pirate Captain Magnum. To bring this vision to life, Mark partnered with Rooster Teeth, a production company based in Austin, Texas, that had extensive experience in creating online content. The production was funded by YouTube Premium, which was investing in original programming for their subscription service. The shoot in Austin was extensive, requiring weeks of filming, elaborate sets, detailed costumes, and careful coordination to ensure that all the branching paths worked correctly and that the interactive elements would function smoothly when viewers navigated through them. A Heist with Markiplier released on October 30th, 2019, and it was made available for free on YouTube, not locked behind a premium subscription. This decision ensured maximum reach and allowed Mark's entire audience to experience the project. The response was overwhelming. The introductory video alone garnered over 37 million views, and viewers spent countless hours exploring all the different paths and endings, comparing notes with each other about what they had discovered, creating flowcharts, mapping out the entire structure of the interactive story. The project was widely praised for its ambition, production quality, humor, and the sheer amount of content Mark and his team had created. It demonstrated that YouTube could be a viable platform for high-quality, innovative entertainment that rivaled what traditional studios were producing. However, the launch of A Heist with Markiplier was not without controversy. The premiere was supposed to be an interactive live stream where viewers could use emotes to vote on which path Mark would take through the story. But during the live stream, a technical issue caused YouTube's automated systems to ban hundreds of viewers who were simply participating as intended. Accounts weren't just getting banned from the live stream. Entire Google accounts were being terminated, which meant people lost access to their email, their documents, everything tied to their Google account. It took nearly an hour and a half for moderators to notice the problem. Mark was understandably upset about the situation, and many viewers whose accounts had been deleted found their appeals denied by Google's automated systems. Eventually, after Mark spoke directly with YouTube about the issue, the accounts were reinstated. It was a reminder that even with all the planning and coordination that had gone into the project, technology could still fail in unexpected and damaging ways. Despite this rough start, A Heist with Markiplier was a creative and commercial success that opened new doors for Mark. He had proven he could conceive, write, and execute large-scale productions. He had demonstrated an understanding of interactive narrative structure that few creators possessed. And he had shown that YouTube's audience was hungry for content that pushed the boundaries of what the platform typically offered. But even as Mark was reaching new heights of creative achievement and professional success, he was thinking about the next challenge, the next project that would push him further outside his comfort zone. In November of 2019, Mark and his longtime friend and collaborator, Ethan Nestor, launched one of the most unusual and philosophically ambitious projects in YouTube history, a channel called Unus Annus, which is Latin for 1 year. The concept behind Unus Annus was simultaneously simple and profound. Mark and Ethan would create a new channel and upload one video per day for exactly 1 year. At the end of that year, on the anniversary of the channel's creation, they would delete the entire channel along with all of its videos. Nothing would be saved or archived. The entire project would exist for precisely 365 days and then disappear forever, leaving only memories. This was a radically different approach to content creation in an era when everything online is typically preserved, backed up, archived, and made permanently accessible. The internet's default setting is permanence. But Mark and Ethan wanted to create something that embraced impermanence, that would remind people of the fleeting nature of existence and the importance of experiencing things in the moment, rather than assuming they'll always be available later. The philosophical underpinning of Unus Annus was the concept of memento mori, a Latin phrase meaning, remember you must die. This phrase, which has ancient roots in Stoic philosophy and Christian meditation practices, is a reminder of human mortality. In classical Rome, a slave would sometimes stand behind a victorious general during his triumph parade, whispering memento mori in his ear to remind him that despite his glory and success, he was still mortal and would one day die. The point of the reminder was not to be morbid or depressing, but rather to encourage the general to maintain humility, to remember what truly mattered, and to use his time wisely, rather than squandering it on vanity and excess. Mark and Ethan wanted to apply this ancient wisdom to modern content creation, to create something that would have value precisely because it was temporary, because experiencing it required being present and engaged, rather than adding it to a watch later playlist that might never be visited. On November 15th, 2019, Mark and Ethan posted their introduction videos. Mark appeared dressed in a white suit, representing Annus, while Ethan wore black, representing Unus. The visual symbolism of black and white, life and death, beginning and end, was woven throughout the project's branding and content. In their introduction, they explained the concept: 1 year, daily uploads, complete deletion at the end. They made clear that they would be actively issuing copyright strikes against anyone who tried to archive and re-upload the content after the channel's deletion. While they acknowledged that some people would inevitably save and share clips, they asked that the full experience be respected as something temporary and ephemeral. The content of Unus Annus was deliberately experimental and often bizarre. Because the channel had a defined endpoint, because it was destined for deletion regardless of how well or poorly it performed, Mark and Ethan felt liberated from the usual concerns about the YouTube algorithm, demonetization, or maintaining a consistent brand. They could make whatever content they wanted without worrying about long-term consequences for the channel. This freedom resulted in some of the strangest, funniest, and most creative videos either of them had ever made. They cooked with sex toys in their very first video, immediately establishing that Unus Annus would not be playing by normal YouTube rules. They tried labor pain simulators, created a sensory deprivation tank, played increasingly absurd games, tested their limits in various physical and mental challenges, and explored topics ranging from death and mortality to the absurd and ridiculous. The response to Unus Annus was immediate and enthusiastic. The channel gained 1 million subscribers within its first 5 days, a remarkable achievement, even considering that both Mark and Ethan were bringing their existing audiences to the new project. Viewers understood they were witnessing something unique, something that wouldn't last, and they showed up in massive numbers to be part of the experience. Over the course of the year, the channel would accumulate a total of 4.56 million subscribers, with millions more viewers who watched without subscribing. Every video was an event because it would only be available for a limited time. The countdown clock that appeared at the end of each video, showing exactly how much time remained until the channel's deletion, served as a constant reminder of the project's mortality. As the year progressed, the Unus Annus community became increasingly invested in the project. Fans created art, music, theories about what certain videos meant, extensive discussions about the philosophy behind the project. The phrase memento mori became a rallying cry for the community, a shared reminder to appreciate the present moment and to engage with life fully rather than putting everything off until later. The project was teaching its audience a lesson about impermanence that felt particularly relevant in the digital age, where we're used to being able to access anything at any time, where the idea of something just disappearing seems alien and wrong. Throughout the year, Mark and Ethan faced the challenge of creating quality content on a daily basis, while also managing their main channels and other commitments. The workload was intense, but they pushed through, determined to see the project through to its intended conclusion. They knew that if they failed to post a video on any given day, if they quit before the year was up, the entire concept would be undermined. The commitment to daily uploads for a full year was itself a statement about dedication, about following through on promises, about respecting the audience who had bought into the concept. The final weeks of Unus Annus took on an increasingly somber and reflective tone. Videos explored themes of legacy, memory, and what it means to create something, knowing it will be destroyed. Mark and Ethan became more openly emotional about the approaching end, acknowledging how much the project had meant to them, and how difficult it would be to actually delete the channel when the time came. On November 14th, 2020, exactly 1 year after the channel's creation, Mark and Ethan hosted a 12-hour live stream that served as a funeral for Unus Annus. The stream featured them reflecting on the year, watching some of their favorite moments, reading messages from viewers, and counting down the final hours and minutes. At its peak, over 1.5 million people were watching the live stream concurrently, all witnessing the death of Unis Annis together as a community. When the clock struck midnight, Mark and Ethan took turns saying goodbye. Then, in front of all those viewers, they made the Unis Annis channel private and deleted it from YouTube. The channel, with its 365 videos and nearly 5 million subscribers, simply ceased to exist. It was a moment that was simultaneously devastating and cathartic, sad and beautiful. The internet had been given something rare, a genuine ending, a piece of content that had a clear beginning, middle, and end, that told its story completely, and then went away. In an era of endless sequels, reboots, and franchise extensions, Unis Annis was a story that knew when to end. The impact of Unis Annis extended far beyond just the entertainment value of its videos. The project sparked widespread discussion about the nature of art, permanence, memory, and how we engage with content in the digital age. It raised questions about preservation and access versus the value of ephemeral experiences, and it created a shared experience for millions of people who had been there, who had witnessed Unis Annis while it existed, who could now look back on that year with a mixture of nostalgia and appreciation for having been present for something special. In recognition of the project's innovation and impact, Unis Annis won the Streamy Award for Best Limited Series in 2020. Mark and Ethan also won the Collaboration Award at the 11th Annual Streamy Awards in 2021. These awards validated what they had attempted to do, confirming that Unis Annis had succeeded not just as an experiment, but as genuinely excellent content that pushed the boundaries of what was possible on YouTube. But even before Unis Annis had concluded, Mark was already at work on his next interactive epic. In December of 2019, he had teased the possibility of a sequel to A Heist with Markiplier, and by late 2020, with Unis Annis complete, he was able to announce that a second interactive YouTube original was in the works. This project would eventually become In Space with Markiplier, a 2-part interactive science fiction adventure that would release in April and May of 2022. In Space with Markiplier was conceived as a spiritual successor to the Heist special rather than a direct sequel, though eagle-eyed viewers would notice connections between the two stories, particularly in a post-credits scene that linked them within a shared multiverse. The basic setup placed the viewer in the role of the captain of a spaceship called the Invincible 2, with Mark playing the ship's head engineer. After a catastrophic malfunction engages the ship's warp core, the crew enters cryogenic sleep, and when they wake up, they find themselves caught in a multiversal time loop where the same events keep repeating with variations. As with the Heist, viewers make choices that determine which path through the story they experience, with each path revealing different aspects of what's really happening aboard the Invincible 2. The production of In Space with Markiplier was even more ambitious than the Heist had been. Mark partnered again with Rooster Teeth to handle the production logistics, and he poured enormous resources into creating elaborate sets, costumes, special effects, and practical effects that would sell the science fiction setting. The cast included Mark in multiple roles, as well as several other actors and creators playing various crew members and alternate versions of characters. The branching narrative structure was more complex than the Heist, with the 2-part release allowing for a massive amount of content spread across dozens of individual videos. Mark has been characteristically transparent about the financial investment required for In Space with Markiplier. In a video uploaded in February of 2021 titled Emergency Meeting, Mark revealed that the project had gone significantly over budget. To help fund the completion of the special, he organized Markiplier's Big Ass Bake Sale, an event where he created exclusive content for his channel members and sold special merchandise, with all proceeds going toward finishing the film. His audience responded enthusiastically, providing the additional funding needed to complete the project to Mark's exacting standards. This transparency about the challenges and costs of ambitious productions was typical of Mark's relationship with his audience. He didn't try to hide when things were difficult, or when he needed help. He trusted his community to understand and support him, and they consistently did. The first part of In Space with Markiplier, released on April 4th, 2022, which happened to coincide with Mark's 10th anniversary on YouTube, a poetic bit of timing that wasn't lost on anyone. The release was highly anticipated, and within hours, the introduction video had pulled in well over 1 million views. Part 2 released on May 2nd, 2022, completing the massive interactive experience. The critical and audience response was overwhelmingly positive. Viewers praised the improved production values compared to The Heist, the compelling science fiction narrative, the humor and heart that Mark brought to his performance, and the sheer ambition of creating something this complex and giving it away for free on YouTube. In Space with Markiplier was nominated for Outstanding Interactive Media at the first ceremony of the Children's and Family Emmy Awards, a recognition that thrilled Mark because it represented validation from the traditional television industry that his work was worthy of consideration alongside professionally produced children's and family programming. Though the project didn't win, the nomination itself was a milestone, further evidence that the lines between traditional media and online content were increasingly blurred. While Mark was creating these elaborate interactive specials and high-concept projects, he was also expanding into audio content through podcasting. In May of 2021, Mark launched Distractable, a podcast co-hosted with his longtime friends Wade Barnes and Bob Meiskens. Unlike Mark's usual content, Distractable wasn't focused on gaming or scripted narratives. Instead, it was a casual conversation show where the three friends would discuss various topics ranging from the absurd to the philosophical, sharing stories from their lives, debating ridiculous hypotheticals, and just enjoying each other's company. The format was loose and unstructured compared to most podcasts, which was precisely the point. Mark, Wade, and Bob had chemistry built on years of friendship, and that natural rapport made the show entertaining even when they were discussing seemingly mundane topics. Distractable was an immediate hit. It reached the #1 spot on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts within days of its launch, displacing even massive shows like Joe Rogan's podcast. This success demonstrated that Mark's appeal extended beyond visual content, that his audience enjoyed simply hearing him talk with his friends, regardless of the topic. The podcast became a regular part of his content output, with new episodes releasing weekly. It gave fans a different side of Mark than they typically saw in his YouTube videos, a more relaxed and casual version of him just hanging out with friends. In February of 2022, Mark and his friend Tyler Scheid launched a second podcast called Go, My Favorite Sports Team. This show took a humorous approach to sports commentary, with Mark and Tyler discussing sports news, events, and culture, despite Mark's admitted lack of deep sports knowledge. The title itself was a joke, a deliberately generic statement of sports enthusiasm that parodied fair-weather fans who claim to love sports without really following any particular team or understanding the games deeply. The show found an audience that appreciated its light-hearted approach to sports commentary, providing entertainment both for serious sports fans who could laugh at the jokes and for people who knew nothing about sports but enjoyed the banter between Mark and Tyler. In March of 2023, Mark announced a major partnership with Spotify. The streaming service had signed an exclusive deal to host video versions of both Distractable and Go, My Favorite Sports Team. This meant that while audio-only versions of the podcasts would remain available on multiple platforms, video episodes showing Mark, Wade, Bob, and Tyler actually recording the podcasts would only be available on Spotify. This deal represented Spotify's continued push into video podcasting and their recognition of Mark's value as a creator who could drive traffic and subscriptions to their platform. For Mark, It was another diversification of his content and revenue streams, reducing his dependence on any single platform or format. The success of Mark's podcasts was directly connected to another of his creative projects, a documentary about his family history titled Markiplier from North Korea. The documentary, which released in 2022, explored Mark's mother's life story, her family's escape from North Korea during the Korean War, and Mark's journey to reconnect with relatives he had never met. The film was deeply personal, exploring themes of family, heritage, identity, and the lasting impact of historical events on individual lives. It showed a vulnerable side of Mark that his gaming videos rarely displayed, and it helped his audience understand more about his background and the experiences that had shaped him. In October of 2022, Mark created one of his most discussed publicity stunts. He announced that he would start an OnlyFans account, but with a twist. It would feature only tasteful nudes. Before launching this account, he set 3 conditions that his audience would need to meet. First, Distractable needed to become the #1 podcast on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify simultaneously. Second, Go, my favorite sports team, needed to reach #1 in the sports category on these platforms. Third, people needed to watch Markiplier from North Korea in significant numbers. These conditions seemed ambitious, perhaps even impossible, but Mark's audience mobilized with impressive speed and coordination. Within days, both podcasts had shot to the top of their respective charts. The documentary saw a massive surge in viewership. Mark's fans had met all 3 conditions faster than Mark himself had anticipated. True to his word, Mark launched his OnlyFans account in December of 2022. The account featured artfully posed photos that were provocative but not explicit, walking a fine line between humor and genuine aesthetic appeal. The announcement that Mark was actually going through with the OnlyFans account created such a surge of traffic that it temporarily crashed the OnlyFans website. Thousands of people trying to subscribe simultaneously overwhelmed the platform's servers, a testament to the sheer size and enthusiasm of Mark's audience. In true Mark fashion, he announced that all proceeds from the OnlyFans account would be split between 2 charities: Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, continuing his long-standing support of the institution that was close to his Ohio roots, and the World Food Program, which works to address global hunger and food insecurity. The stunt was simultaneously absurd, clever, and genuinely charitable. It got people talking about Mark's work, drove engagement with his podcasts and documentary, and raised significant funds for important causes, all while generating headlines across media outlets trying to explain why one of YouTube's biggest gaming creators had started an OnlyFans account. Throughout all of these projects, Mark maintained his core YouTube channel, continuing to upload gaming videos, vlogs, and other content that kept his main audience engaged. In March of 2018, he had made a commitment to upload a video every single day to his main channel, with a self-imposed punishment of eating a ghost pepper for every day he missed. While he occasionally had to skip days for various reasons, including health issues, work on major projects, or family emergencies, he generally stuck to this challenging schedule, demonstrating a work ethic that was simultaneously impressive and perhaps slightly concerning to fans who worried about his health and risk of burnout. Mark also continued to collaborate extensively with other creators. His friendships with creators like Jacksepticeye, Shion McLaughlin, PewDiePie, Felix Kylberg, and Crank Gameplay's Ethan Nestor led to numerous collaborative videos that delighted fans of all the creators involved. These collaborations weren't just good content. They were genuine expressions of friendship and mutual respect between creators who had come up through the YouTube ecosystem together, who understood the unique challenges and pressures of their profession, and who genuinely enjoyed working together. In 2018, Mark and Jacksepticeye launched a clothing brand called Cloak. The brand was designed to fill what they saw as a gap in the market. High quality, stylish, comfortable clothing specifically designed for gamers and content creators. Mark and Xian had both experienced frustration with existing gaming branded clothing, which they felt was often low quality, poorly designed, or covered in garish logos that screamed, "I'm a gamer," rather than offering subtle, tasteful designs that could be worn in various contexts. Cloak was their attempt to create something better. Clothing that reflected the aesthetic sensibilities of actual gamers rather than what marketers thought gamers wanted. The brand's tagline was "hidden in plain sight," emphasizing that Cloak's designs would be subtle and understated rather than loud and obvious. The clothing featured minimal branding, focusing on quality materials, good fit, and comfortable designs that would work both for sitting at a computer for hours and for going out in public. When Cloak launched in October of 2018, it offered a limited initial collection of t-shirts priced at $35 each and hoodies priced at $80 each. The pricing immediately sparked controversy, with some people accusing Mark and Xian of overcharging their young audience for basic clothing items that could be found cheaper elsewhere. Mark and Xian defended the pricing by explaining that Cloak's clothes were ethically produced, meaning the workers who made them were paid fair wages and worked in safe conditions, which increased the cost compared to fast fashion brands that relied on exploitative labor practices. They also emphasized that the clothes were designed to last, using higher quality materials than typical merchandise, and that the sizes ranged from small to 3X, with a focus on inclusive sizing and gender-neutral designs that would work for all body types. Despite the controversy, Cloak found its audience. Presale items sold well, and the brand continued to grow and expand its offerings. In June of 2020, Cloak welcomed Pokemon, one of the most popular streamers on Twitch, as a partner and creative director. Her involvement brought additional perspectives to the brand and helped expand its appeal beyond just Mark and Xian's audiences. Cloak began partnering with various games and franchises for special collections. They released a collection tied to Minecraft dungeons that sold out rapidly. They partnered with Scott Cawthon to create a 15-item Five Nights at Freddy's collection that sold out within minutes of release. They created collections for Elden Ring, and they worked with the Trevor Project to create a Pride-themed Colors line, with proceeds going to support LGBTQ+ youth, which also sold out immediately. By 2024, Cloak had grown into a legitimate clothing brand with a loyal customer base, regular product launches, and a reputation for quality that had largely overcome the early pricing controversies. The brand represented another successful diversification of Mark's business interests, creating a revenue stream that wasn't dependent on algorithms, ad rates, or platform policies. But even as Mark was succeeding in podcasting, merchandise, and interactive content, he was setting his sights on an even more ambitious goal: traditional filmmaking. In 2019, Mark had executive, produced, and starred in a podcast called The Edge of Sleep, created by Jake Emanuel and Willie Block. The podcast was a psychological horror story about a night watchman named Dave Torres, who discovers that everyone who fell asleep the previous night has died. Dave and a small group of survivors must stay awake and figure out what's causing people to die in their sleep while fighting their own exhaustion and the terrifying things that seem to be stalking them. The podcast was a massive success, becoming one of the biggest narrative genre podcasts of all time with millions of downloads. Based on the podcast's success, a television adaptation was developed with Mark reprising his role as Dave Torres. The series was filmed in 2021 and 2022, with Mark not just starring, but also serving as a producer. The cast included Leo Tipton, Franz Drama, and Eve Harlow in major roles. The show was directed by Corey Adams and consisted of 6 episodes adapting and expanding the story of the original podcast. By all accounts, the production went smoothly, and the final product was something Mark was proud of and believed in. However, getting the show distributed proved to be a nightmare. Despite Mark's massive audience and proven track record, despite the success of the original podcast, despite having a completed series that industry professionals who saw it thought was genuinely good, every major streaming platform passed on the edge of sleep. Netflix said no. Hulu said no. Amazon Prime Video said no. Mark and his team took meetings with every viable outlet, and the answer was consistently the same. We're not interested. The feedback often boiled down to dismissiveness about Mark being a YouTuber rather than a traditional actor or filmmaker. The entertainment industry, it seemed, was still not ready to take creators from YouTube seriously, regardless of how large their audiences were or how professional their work was. Frustrated but not defeated, Mark and his team found an unconventional solution. In October of 2024, they self-published The Edge of Sleep through Amazon's Prime Video Direct program, a self-publishing portal that allows creators to upload content directly to Amazon's platform without going through traditional distribution channels. This meant that Amazon wasn't officially picking up the show, wasn't promoting it, wasn't putting their marketing muscle behind it. But it also meant that the show could at least be made available to viewers who wanted to watch it. The release strategy was complicated by legal restrictions that prevented Mark from announcing where the show would be available until the actual release date. This led to Mark posting a cryptic video in late September of 2024 called The Plan, where he explained that The Edge of Sleep was coming soon and that he needed viewers to watch it and help it reach the top 10 on its platform when it released, but he couldn't tell them which platform it would be on. The mysterious nature of this announcement created enormous anticipation and speculation among his fans. When The Edge of Sleep was quietly uploaded to Amazon Prime Video on October 15th, 2024, 3 days earlier than the announced October 18th release date, Mark's audience found it almost immediately, despite the lack of official promotion. Mark quickly posted an update video, acknowledging that the show had been released early without his knowledge or control, which was somewhat frustrating from a planning perspective, but also meant people could start watching immediately. He reiterated his goal: get The Edge of Sleep into the top 10 most watched shows on Prime Video in the United States. He explained that achieving this would open doors, implying that if he could prove his audience could translate into viewing numbers on a traditional streaming platform, it would help with the distribution of his other projects, particularly his film Iron Lung. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 24 hours of release, The Edge of Sleep had climbed into Prime Video's top 10, eventually peaking at number 6. Mark hosted a 3-hour live stream that evening, where over 1.2 million people tuned in to hear him answer questions about the making of the series and discuss the challenges he had faced in getting it released. The success of The Edge of Sleep on Prime Video, achieved entirely through word of mouth and Mark's direct appeals to his audience, without any support from Amazon's marketing department, proved something important. Mark's audience could and would show up for his work in traditional formats if given the opportunity. It was a powerful demonstration that the entertainment industry had been wrong to dismiss him. The experience with The Edge of Sleep was particularly frustrating and meaningful because it related directly to Mark's other major film project, Iron Lung. In April of 2023, Deadline had announced that Mark was entering production on a film adaptation of David Szymanski's 2022 indie horror game, Iron Lung. This was not a commission project from a studio or a work-for-hire situation. Mark was self-financing the entire production, serving as director, producer, writer, and star of the film. He had hired cast and crew, secured locations in Austin, Texas, and was putting his own money on the line to bring this vision to life. Iron Lung. The game is a short but intensely claustrophobic horror experience. The player controls a convict who has been sent in a tiny, rusty submarine to explore an ocean of blood on an alien moon following a mysterious event called the Quiet Rapture that caused all habitable planets to suddenly vanish. The submarine has no windows, only cameras that can briefly capture still images of what's outside, and a depth gauge and proximity sensors that provide minimal information about the surrounding environment. The player must navigate blindly through this ocean of blood, taking photographs of specific coordinates, while something unknown lurks in the depths. The game creates terror through isolation, helplessness, and the constant fear of what might be out there in the darkness beyond the submarine's thin metal walls. Mark's passion for the project was evident in every update he provided. He had loved the game when he first played it on his channel, and he believed it had the potential to be adapted into a genuinely frightening film. The challenge was maintaining the game's claustrophobic tension and the sense of isolation, while expanding it into a feature-length narrative. Mark worked closely with David Szymanski throughout the development of the script, ensuring that the adaptation stayed true to the spirit of the original while working as a cinematic experience. Szymanski was on set during filming and even made a cameo in the film. Production on Iron Lung took place in Austin in early 2024. Mark documented parts of the process on his YouTube channel, showing behind-the-scenes glimpses of the sets, the submarine interior that had been constructed for filming, the practical effects being used to create the blood ocean environment. The cast included Mark himself in the lead role, as well as Caroline Kaplan, Ella Lamont, and Sean McLaughlin in supporting roles. Mark's dedication to the project was intense. In June of 2024, he posted an update video announcing that filming was complete and the project was moving into post-production. He described it as the longest run of pure work that I have ever done in my entire life, and the most arduous thing that I have ever taken on. The film was completed by mid-2024, but Mark faced the same challenge that had plagued The Edge of Sleep: finding distribution. He wanted Iron Lung to get a theatrical release, to play in actual movie theaters where audiences could experience its sound design and scares in the immersive environment that cinema provides. But traditional distributors were hesitant, again falling back on the idea that a YouTuber couldn't draw audiences to theaters regardless of how good the film might be. This was where the success of The Edge of Sleep became crucial. By proving that his audience would show up for his work on streaming platforms, Mark hoped to convince theatrical distributors that people would also buy tickets to see Iron Lung in theaters. As of late 2024, Iron Lung remained without a distributor, though negotiations were ongoing. Mark had stated multiple times that he was committed to getting the film released theatrically, rather than just selling it to a streaming service, because he believed it needed to be experienced in a theater to have its full impact. The situation was frustrating, but also somewhat typical of the challenges that independent filmmakers face, even those with massive built-in audiences. The traditional entertainment industry's gatekeepers remained skeptical of creators from online platforms, requiring proof that seemed to exceed what they would demand from traditional filmmakers with equivalent track records. While Mark was fighting these battles in the entertainment industry, his personal life was also evolving in significant ways. In 2015, Mark had begun a relationship with Amy Nelson, a talented graphic designer and animator who had worked on various projects in the YouTube creator space. Amy, who sometimes went by Peebles or Ice Dark Roast online, was creative in her own right, with skills in art, animation, and design that complemented Mark's storytelling and performance abilities. The relationship grew steadily over the years, with Amy occasionally appearing in Mark's videos and becoming a beloved figure within his community. She played a significant behind-the-scenes role in many of Mark's projects and was particularly involved in the planning and execution of Unus Annus, where she served as a producer and creative collaborator, even though she rarely appeared on camera. Mark and Amy's relationship was characterized by mutual respect, shared creative interests, and a deep compatibility that was evident to anyone who saw them interact. They navigated the challenges of Mark's increasingly high-profile career together, with Amy providing support and stability while also pursuing her own creative work. On September 20th, 2025, after being together for 10 years, Mark and Amy got married. The wedding was a private affair, with Mark sharing the news with his audience, but keeping the details relatively personal, consistent with his approach of sharing parts of his life, while maintaining boundaries about what remained private. Throughout his career, Mark has been relatively open about his struggles with mental health, his battles with imposter syndrome, his moments of doubt and uncertainty about whether he was on the right path. This vulnerability, this willingness to acknowledge that success doesn't eliminate personal struggles, has endeared him to his audience and made him a relatable figure, even as his career reached heights that most people can only dream of. He has spoken about dealing with anxiety, about the pressure of maintaining a successful channel while trying to grow and evolve creatively, about the difficulty of balancing ambition with self-care and personal well-being. Mark has also been forthright about his non-religious worldview. While he attended church regularly with his family during his early childhood, he lost interest in religion fairly quickly and doesn't identify as religious as an adult. He describes himself as agnostic rather than fully atheist, acknowledging uncertainty about questions of God and ultimate meaning while living his life according to humanistic principles of kindness, empathy, and service to others. His ethical framework, as demonstrated through his actions rather than stated beliefs, emphasizes compassion, supporting those in need, using whatever privileges and resources one has to make the world better, and treating people with dignity and respect regardless of their background or circumstances. Mark's commitment to charity has remained a constant throughout his career's evolution. By the mid-2020s, he and his audience had collectively raised well over $10 million for various causes. The charitable organizations he has supported read like a catalog of crucial causes: cancer research in honor of his father, children's hospitals providing critical care, mental health support organizations like the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance, animal welfare groups like Best Friends, Animal Society, disaster relief efforts through organizations like the World Food Program, and numerous other causes that address suffering and need in various forms. His approach to charity has been characterized by transparency about where money goes, personal donations that match or exceed what he asks his audience to contribute, and a genuine passion for the causes he supports that goes beyond just hosting fundraising streams. In recognition of his charitable work, Mark received the Oliver R. Grace Award for Distinguished Service in Advancing Cancer Research. The award, presented by the Cancer Research Foundation, recognizes individuals who have made significant contributions to the fight against cancer through fundraising, awareness raising, or advocacy. For Mark, whose father died from lung cancer when Mark was just 19, the recognition was particularly meaningful. It represented validation that his efforts to transform personal grief into public good had made a real difference in funding research that might one day spare other families from the loss he had experienced. Mark's collaborations over the years have created a network of creators who regard him not just as a colleague, but as a genuine friend. His friendship with Jacksepticeye has been particularly significant, with the two collaborating on everything from videos to the cloak clothing brand to simply supporting each other through the various challenges that come with being high-profile creators. His long-standing friendships with Wade Barnes and Bob Meiskens, stretching back to their college days, have provided stability and continuity, even as his life has changed dramatically. These aren't just professional relationships or strategic partnerships. They're genuine friendships with people who knew Mark before he was famous, who remember the quiet guy from Ohio who dreamed of making something meaningful, Mark has also maintained collaborative relationships with creators across the YouTube ecosystem. He has worked with PewDiePie, the most subscribed individual creator on YouTube, on various collaborative videos. He has appeared on shows and series produced by other creators, lent his voice to projects, and generally participated in the collaborative culture that has been such a positive aspect of the creator community. He has been generous with his time and platform, highlighting smaller creators, offering advice and support to people starting out, and using his influence to help others rather than guarding it jealously. As of late 2024, Mark's YouTube channel had surpassed 37 million subscribers, with total video views exceeding 22 billion. These numbers are staggering, representing an audience larger than the population of many countries, a viewership that would be the envy of any television network or film studio. But what's more impressive than the raw numbers is the consistency of his viewership and the depth of his audience's engagement. Mark's videos regularly pull in millions of views within hours of posting. His community is active, passionate, and loyal in ways that go beyond typical fandom. When he needs support, whether it's for a charitable cause, a creative project, or a professional challenge, they show up in force. Mark's influence on YouTube gaming culture and content creation more broadly cannot be overstated. He was part of the generation of creators who helped establish Let's Play videos as a legitimate and popular form of entertainment. His coverage of Five Nights at Freddy's helped launch that franchise into the stratosphere and demonstrated the symbiotic relationship that could exist between game developers and content creators. His interactive content pushed the boundaries of what YouTube could be, showing that the platform could host ambitious creative storytelling that rivaled entertainment produced by traditional studios. His charitable work established a model for how creators could use their platforms for social good, making philanthropy a core part of their brand rather than just an occasional PR exercise. Mark has also been influential in demonstrating that creators can successfully diversify across multiple platforms and formats. His podcasts have reached #1 on multiple platforms. His clothing brand has become a legitimate business. His scripted content has won awards and nominations from traditional entertainment industry institutions. He has proven that success on YouTube doesn't have to be the ceiling of one's ambitions, that creators can branch out into film, television, podcasts, business ventures, and other areas while maintaining their core connection with their YouTube audience. The path he has charted shows other creators what's possible if they're willing to take risks, work incredibly hard, and stay true to their creative vision. Looking toward the future, Mark's ambitions remain expansive. The theatrical release of Iron Lung is a priority, representing his entry into traditional cinema as a director and filmmaker. If successful, it could open doors for further film projects, potentially establishing Mark as a filmmaker who happens to have started on YouTube, rather than just a YouTuber who made a movie. The potential second season of The Edge of Sleep would allow him to continue developing that story and his acting abilities in long-form serialized content. His continued work on interactive content suggests that there may be more ambitious narrative projects on the horizon, building on the foundation established by A Date with Markiplier, A Heist with Markiplier, and In Space with Markiplier. But regardless of what specific projects come next, certain elements seem likely to remain constant in Mark's work. He will continue to create content that pushes boundaries and challenges himself creatively. He will continue to use his platform to support charitable causes and make a positive impact in the world. He will continue to maintain his connection with his audience, treating them as partners in his creative journey, rather than just consumers of content. And he will continue to work with a level of passion and dedication that has characterized his entire career, never coasting on past success or becoming complacent about what he's accomplished. The story of Markiplier is ultimately a story about the power of perseverance and the courage to pursue unconventional paths. Mark was a college dropout with mounting debt, recovering from surgery, facing an uncertain future with no clear plan. He made a choice that seemed risky and perhaps irrational to many people. He bet on himself, on his creativity, on his ability to connect with an audience through a platform that was still finding its identity. That bet paid off beyond anyone's wildest expectations, but not because of luck or being in the right place at the right time. It paid off because Mark worked relentlessly, pushed himself creatively, stayed authentic to his personality and values, and built genuine connections with the people who watched his content. His journey also demonstrates the changing landscape of entertainment and fame in the 21st century. A person can now build an audience of millions, create ambitious projects, influence culture, and make a meaningful impact on the world without ever going through traditional entertainment industry gatekeepers. The fact that those gatekeepers are still skeptical, that they still dismiss online creators despite overwhelming evidence of their reach and influence, speaks to how slowly institutions adapt to change. But creators like Mark are proving that the gatekeepers' opinions matter less and less. That direct connection with audiences through platforms like YouTube creates opportunities that don't require permission from established power structures. As Mark continues to create, to experiment, to push boundaries, and try new things, his legacy is already secure. He helped define what YouTube gaming content could be. He demonstrated that online creators could be legitimate philanthropists, making real differences in important causes. He showed that interactive storytelling was possible on YouTube and could be genuinely engaging and innovative. He proved that authenticity and vulnerability could coexist with entertainment and humor. He built a community that spans the globe, connecting millions of people through shared experiences and values. The quiet kid from Milford, Ohio, the biracial son of a military father and Korean mother, the college dropout recovering from surgery in a hospital bed, the struggling YouTuber dealing with channel difficulties and financial uncertainty. That person became Markiplier, one of the most influential content creators of his generation. And the story isn't over. Mark is still creating, still growing, still pushing himself to do bigger and better things. The next chapter of this journey is still being written, and based on everything that's come before, it's likely to be remarkable. So as we close this long examination of Markiplier's history, from his birth in Hawaii to his current status as a multi-platform creator, filmmaker, podcaster, entrepreneur, and philanthropist, we're left with an appreciation for the complexity of the journey. Success isn't simple or straightforward. It requires dealing with loss, overcoming health challenges, facing rejection, taking risks, working harder than seems reasonable, maintaining relationships, staying true to your values even when it would be easier not to, and pushing forward even when the path ahead is unclear. Mark has done all of these things, and in doing so, he's created something meaningful that will be remembered long after the specific games he played or videos he uploaded have faded from immediate memory. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Markiplier's history, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are so many more stories to tell about the creators, trends, and moments that have shaped online culture, and your support makes it possible to continue creating this kind of comprehensive, thoughtful content. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.